protests in response to the killing of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery and Nina Pop aren't simply a reaction to those particular tragedies, as heartbreaking as they are. They speak to decades worth of anguish and frustration over unequal treatment and a failure to reform police practices and the broader criminal justice system.
Over these past couple of months, our foundation has been shaken, not just by a pandemic that stole too many of our loved ones, upended our daily lives, and sent tens of millions into unemployment, but also by the rumbling of the age-old fault lines that our country was built on, the lines of race and power that are now once again so nakedly exposed for all of us to grapple with.
The New York Times did an article the other day about when Amy Cooper and Christian Cooper's lives sort of converged. And the fact that the Amy Cooper Central Park situation happened on the same day as George Floyd lost his life. And you realize how far anti-Blackness and the weaponization of whiteness, how far it can go.
I think the white community, as they're leaning in now, I think it's important that, you know, you all really listen to what is being said in the environment and the climate now, even through the emotion that's being emitted.
We, for a long time, have tried to put reconciliation before truth. But when you do that, you don't really understand, you know, really what is oppressing people and really what the problems are. And we try to move to a post-racial type of society and move on from our past without actually addressing the history and the way that our past pretty much paints the present.
The lack of an economic base or power structure is, I believe, what makes us so vulnerable to these tragedies.
I use my power to demand diversity, but it's time that studios and agencies, all these buildings that we're standing in front of, I want you to do the same.
And the films, I think, that are coming out of Hollywood aren't truthful. And the reason they're not truthful these days is because they're not really depicting the importance and the involvement and the participation of people of color in our American culture.
Fight for the ideals that make our country and make our Hollywood community great. And so when I look at the series of nominations of the Academy, it's not reflecting that beauty.
He's one of America's finest black actors. That narrows you, you know? It just puts you in a box over here. You can't be part of the whole pantheon.
If we are indeed committed to inclusion and diversity, and we actually do see our people of color as the same as us, as our counterparts, then why can't you consider a character that maybe is not ethnically specific? Why can't you consider someone like me for it? If it's not a big deal, why hasn't it been done?
Just really opened my eyes to a mentality that still exists. You know, I thought that was really isolated to those days that we were past, and sadly they're not.
I've got 3 kids. My oldest is 33 and my youngest almost 18. And with each one of them, I've had to deal with them coming to ask me, why would somebody call me the N-word?
Yeah, I was definitely aware of Tulsa. My mother is a teacher. And so while that wasn't taught in school, that school is not where I learned about it.
2018, the NFL says players are not allowed to kneel for the national anthem. If you're going to peacefully protest, you better stay your butt inside. I want to see Goodell do the right thing. I'm so tired of putting out a political statement. I want to see real action. I want to see mandated integration on the coaching level.
Who are the team owners of these organizations? Who are the upper management of these organizations? And let's be honest, there are a lot of white men, and they don't have that understanding of what black athletes go through and have gone through, and not only athletes, but the black community.
I left the NFL 23 years ago, and it still is, but you know, racism was prevalent all the way throughout. But there was a lot of indignities that I had to just put up with simply because I wanted to, make conditions better for my family.
Then when I moved into the suburbs and, we were the minority there, it was very different. That's when I first, that's when a lot of bullying started. when I was at school, and definitely predicated on race.
Especially in the Black community, because we've seen this over and over and over, about police brutality and the things that goes on in the inner city when being, racially profiled as an African American Black man or as a Black woman.
Gonna buy it. Why are you targeting us? And now that everyone had left, she became really defensive, got really agitated, and ran behind the counter and said, "I'm calling the police on you. You need to get out of my store now."
So it's not like saying to my son, put your hands on the dash, don't be confrontational. Those conversations are already emasculating to basically say, forget about justice in an interaction with the police. Yes. Come home alive.
Yeah. And for everybody who's watching who is not Black, that is the conversation, that is the talk that every Black parent has had to have with their children, particularly their sons. I do not know a Black man who has not been profiled. I do not know a Black man who has not been stopped at some point, including Stedman Graham.
So many of the things that affect the daily lives of so many people and that have affected Black and brown lives so negatively over the years have been these local decisions like housing segregation and zoning and school segregation and who gets chosen to be the police chief and how much budget goes to policing.
Well, racism is in the heart of the country. It just, you can't get away from it. It's children are taught it without realizing that that's what they're learning. So
racism and bias in our criminal justice system has been there ever since the founding fathers, and something has to be done about it.
But we want to keep monuments. Everybody was recoiled and discussed with what happened to George Floyd, but they want to keep monuments to men who did far worse to Black people. Far worse. We have men who performed surgery on enslaved Black women with no anesthesia have statues.
People think when police violence happens, they think, oh, well, what did that person say? What did that person do? And that gave me a real superpower here because, if you watch the show, maybe you've seen me enough to come to the conclusion that I'm a regular dude. I'm not running around yelling at people, demanding. I'm just hanging out and giggling. And that happened,
I shouldn't be afraid when I see those lights come on behind me, right? I shouldn't feel like, is this going to be the last day that I'm on earth? I shouldn't feel like it's dangerous to be born the way that I was born.
As I'm walking across the street, 4 officers got their guns blazing. They tell me to get on the ground, spread my arms out. They put me in cuffs. The officer took his knee, put it on my neck.
Police brutality been going on even way before I was born, but it has been more visual ever since social media started getting popping.
I mean, ultimately, it's to bring awareness and make people realize what's really going on in this country. There are a lot of things that are going on that are unjust, people aren't being held accountable for, and that's something that needs to change. That's something that, this country stands for freedom, liberty, justice for all, and it's not happening for all right now.
It's just saying that we're just asking to matter, and somehow that becomes a challenge, or somehow that becomes unreasonable to some people, and it's the absurdity of not being able to give us that much, is really all it is.
I just really invite people to think about, if your concern with the murder of Black people by police can be deterred or shifted because someone is taking a pair of jeans from a Target, then you've got to look at how much you cared about the murder of the Black people by the police to begin with. It's as if I was gonna care about Black people being murdered, but that guy took those shoes. So I don't know now. That's how ridiculous it sounds to me.
You know what's most troubling about this? Is that it makes you wonder how many people have been arrested and put in jail because everyone assumes the police version of the events is always the truth.
I'm shocked and surprised we got to keep having these conversations over and over again. Over and over again. Every few months, every year, or whatever, I feel like we're having these conversations over and over again and it has to stop.
When we see you guys out here on the front line, we want to let you know you got support.
What gives me hope is seeing all across the country our white brothers and sisters arm in arm with their black and brown brothers and sisters.
A lot of things, and people were busy and going to work and maybe like, oh, I want to watch something happy, you know, and I think now people are really in the process of wanting change and evolution.
We can't do it alone. If we're out there marching and asking for change, you know, we need white people to do it. We need white people to tell white people to stop being racist.
And then we need to start realizing what our system looks like. I think we all just need to realize that we're all human and living on the same earth and need to start working together before we don't have nothing.
I've had some really lovely conversations with my friends that are not Black. What I'm hearing is we see it, we hear it, we know that you need an accomplice, not just an ally.
We must say the words, Black Lives Matter.
No more seeing people of color as less than human. We can no longer look away.
Having that conversation, getting to know the experience of an African-American player or a person working in your space.
The problem is that there are people who don't want things to change. And there's always been people to rise up and fight against that. It's exhausting, but we have a life. We have breath in our lungs. People like George Floyd do not have breath in their lungs anymore. Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery. Let's do something.
We are a physical representation of our support for Trayvon Martin. We are a physical representation of our support for Stephen Lawrence. For Mark Duggan.
When I say Black Lives Matter, that don't mean yours don't. When I say Black Lives Matter, that don't mean your kids won't. They will. They gonna say it with us, because they get us.
But the white supremacists go in the cops' face and spit. Try to barbecue, Becky call the cops on the kid. Hoping and praying it'd be some Emmett Till shit. Sandra wasn't bland, they hated Mike cause he brown. Trayvon should have had an Aston Martin riding around.
If life can have an ending, all things can have an ending. Systemic racism can have an ending. Police brutality can have an ending. Economic repression of Black and brown people can have an ending.
Failing to signal a lane change. Riding in your girlfriend's car with a child in the back.
Running to the bathroom in your own apartment.
Riding a commuter train.
Walking home with a friend.
Making eye contact.
Selling CDs outside of a supermarket.
Wearing a hoodie. Walking away from police.
Walking toward police.
Missing a front license plate.
Holding a fake gun in the park in Ohio.
Driving with a broken brake light. Sitting in your car before your bachelor party.
Walking up the stairwell of your apartment building.
Calling for help after an accident.
Holding a fake gun in Virginia. Holding a fake gun in Walmart.
Laughing.
Holding a wallet.
Doing absolutely nothing.
Not servile enough. That the time for change is now. We demand radical transformation to heal a long history of systemic racism so that all Americans have the equal right to live and to pursue happiness.
We wanted to do a small gesture to spread awareness about the unjust deaths of many African Americans here in this country.
We put our rackets down and our hands up.